Hey guys, it's Ross going on the Space Couch. I'm going to go through my Anne Rice book collection, but I've got so many of them I'm going to have to break it down into 3 different parts. This video will be the Vampire Chronicles, then there'll also be one on the Mayfair Witches, which ended up intertwining with the Vampire Chronicles later on down the line, and then basically everything else. So, let's get on with it. First of all, this absolute classic of literature. Interview with the Vampire. You read this, you read Bram Stoker's Dracula, you read Frankenstein, they all could have been written at the same time, very contemporary. So it's Louis Lestat, Lestat and Louis, and they were the main protagonists. Great in the film as well. I think I actually saw it when I was doing my year in the US, but thoroughly enjoyed this book. About time I read this again, I think, actually. Then, the sequel to that, The Vampire Lestat, and this was great. And I read these 3 books in my first or second year at university. So, all about his background, his family life in France, growing up as an impoverished nobleman, and obviously getting turned into a vampire in his adventures then. And then, Queen of the Damned. The film was alright, but it skipped a lot of stuff. All about her, the original vampire queen, and how she kills the king back in the day, escapes, starts wreaking revenge on vampires everywhere, burning them to a crisp, and all that stuff. Great stuff. And then we have this, The Tale of the Body Thief. Thoroughly enjoyed this, all about Lestat getting booted out of his own body and inhabiting someone else, learning what it's like to be human again. But the best thing about this is I got this during my year in the United States. So this would have been late 92, early 93, from the Hungry Mind bookstore in St. Paul, and I got it signed by Anne Rice because she was doing a signing of this book. So yes. And I said to her, please don't stop writing. And she smiled and said, thank you. So yes, I met Anne Rice. And next, Memnoch the Devil. I thoroughly enjoyed this. All about him and Memnoch, who is the devil. Interesting depiction how he's just this nondescript person that you wouldn't even notice. And then, of course, he has his angelic, beautiful form, and he has his demonic form as well. Great stuff. Really, really enjoyed it. It kind of started to go a little bit off track after that. Then it was like the new Tales of the Vampire. So it's about Pandora, one of the characters who appeared, I think, in Queen of the Damned. What was it about her? Yeah, David, who's one of the Talamasca, and is present throughout, although obviously he gets turned eventually, doesn't he? She's talking to him. I remember when I bought this, reading it in a bar in the West End, having a pint of beer. So next after that, the Vampire Armand, obviously from Interview with the Vampire and thereafter. In one of the previous books, I think they thought he had sacrificed himself, but he hadn't. He survived. It's a nice picture of her there. Then the next one, Blood and Gold. I think these are all chronological. Blood and Gold. This is about Marius, the guy who he's the one who turns to Lestat, isn't he? So let's see. Once a proud senator in Imperial Rome, Marius was kidnapped by the Druids and made a blood god. That's referenced in one of the earlier books, I do believe. The blood god of the old times, and protector of the king and queen of the vampires. Yes, that's right, it becomes familiar to me now. He was the one looking after Akasha, in whom the core of the supernatural race resides. Through his eyes we see the fall of pagan Rome to the Emperor Constantine, the horrific sack of the Eternal City at the hands of the Visigoths, and the vile aftermath of the Black Death. Ultimately restored by the beauty of the Renaissance, Marius becomes a painter living dangerously yet happily among mortals, and gives his heart to the great master Botticelli, to the bewitching courtesan Bianca, and to the mysterious young apprentice Armand. But it is in our time, deep in the jungle, when Marius will meet his fate, seeking justice from the oldest vampires in the world. Can't remember how that played out. I'm sure he survived. Vittorio the Vampire, I don't even remember this character at all. It might have just been he was created for this. Let's see. Educated in the Florence of Cosimo de Medici. I've got an affinity for that era, so I might have to reread this. Trained in knighthood at his father's mountaintop castle, Vittorio inhabits a world of courtly splendour and country pleasures. A world suddenly threatened when his entire family is confronted by an unholy power. In the midst of this upheaval, Vittorio is seduced by the vampire Ursula, the most beautiful of his supernatural enemies. How many supernatural enemies does he have? As he sets out in pursuit of vengeance, entering the nightmarish court of the Ruby Grail, increasingly more enchanted and confused by his love for the mysterious Ursula, he finds himself facing demonic adversaries, war, and political intrigue against his backdrop of the wonders, both sacred and profane. And the beauty and ferocity of Renaissance Italy, Anne Rice creates a passionate and tragic legend of doomed young love and lost innocence. It's basically Vampire Romeo and Juliet. Yeah, haven't read any of these for ages. And then Merrick. But I think this is a bit of a crossover with the Mayfair Witches. Yeah. In the dazzling new volume, it is Lestat's charismatic friend and coeval, Louis de Pont du Lac, that was his surname, originating in 18th century France, an interview with the vampire, now at home in present-day New Orleans. It's amazing how they take to modern-day life, isn't it? He takes centre stage, tortured by the memory of the child vampire Claudia, whom he loved and lost. That was great, Claudia, both in the book and in the movie. With the help of David Talbot, ultimate fixer from, of course, and it was Kirsten Dunst, wasn't it? Help of David Talbot, ultimate fixer from the secret Talamasca organisation. Louis appeals to Merrick, the beautiful mixed-race daughter of the New Orleans Mayfair clan, from the wrong side of the tracks. To save Louis' sanity, Merrick must use her black witchcraft to call up the ghost of Claudia, however dangerous this may be. But there are other spirits who will not lie still, and her search takes her close to the edge, through blood and terror, voodoo and violence. Sweeping from New Orleans to the Brazilian jungle, this is vampire literature at its most thrilling, seductive and superb. Yes, interesting cover on that one, with the mask and candles. So that is the last of the Vampire Chronicles. It was the law of diminishing returns by the time we would get to things like, say, Pandora or whatever. It was interesting, but it was not necessary. But anyway, we'll call this a halt to this video here, and we'll pick it up with the Mayfair Witches in the next one.